welcome back to the podcast. My guest today, coming from their fishing boat, are Sena and Rich Wheeler from Sena Sea Wild Alaska Fish. Thanks for being on here, you two.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
So, what kind? I got to know what type of boat are we on, and what's going on there.
So it's a bow picker. The brand or the model or the maker is a Pacific bow picker out of Canada that I've owned for 14 years now and refitted twice. And in its current configuration is flush deck with RSW, electric RSW, and some other modifications. But it's been a nice vessel for my family, and maybe not the most competitive boat that I would want knowing the fishery today.
Yeah.
When I jumped into it, I had a real different idea of how my life was going to be at that very moment. But
Well, we had 3 young kids, and although it's less competitive, it doesn't have the jet drives and things like that. It's a little more comfortable for a family of 5.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's why we got it. And then it's got units in a fishery that a lot of people, like to fish on the inside, and I have to kind of bear it on the outside out in the ocean and rougher weather. But it's been a good boat. Really happy with it.
Yeah, my wife and I were out halibut fishing yesterday, and there was an opening, and so we saw 6 or 7 different seiners, and you just look at the variety. Some of them look like they were from the 30s or 40s, and others are just these huge, beautiful, multi-million-dollar boats. So I guess all boats are pretty much multi-million-dollar now, because even just getting a charter boat is $250,000 or $500,000. Those things are pretty expensive.
Yeah. And this was affordable at the time that I got it, and I wish that I would have had one of my good friends say, "Don't buy that boat." But
So take me through the process, because you're currently in season right now. So if someone were to order fish from your website, maybe give me the story of a piece of salmon that comes from that area. What's going to from the ocean to their front door? What's that journey going to look like?
so the uniqueness of what Sena and I are doing is, one, we are vertically integrated all the way through, from catching the fish to processing the fish to sending the fish to your door. And this is something that I don't know if many people in this industry is involved and diversified in what they're doing is what we're doing. And Sena would.
Well, because we're actually doing all that, people might have somebody else cut it and things like that. So we don't catch every fish anymore. Rich is fisherman, but we also catch from fishermen that we know and trust, of course. And then we have the 60 North, which is our processing facility. So we have a small custom processing facility. So we cut the fish ourselves with our crew, which means we can be really specific about what we need, how it's going to look, the size of the portions and all of that. And then it gets sent down to Washington State, where we live in the winter, and that's where our warehouse is. And down in Washington State, we have a little packing crew, and we hand pack every box and ship it out, and we ship it overnight. So we ship on Mondays and Tuesdays. So if you order early in the week, people are, wow, it came right away. And then, if you order later, it's going to come on the, ship on Monday or Tuesday. But it's a pretty efficient little operation, I think.
Yeah. It's typically a boat would offload either at a plant or at the tender, and that would be the end of their participation in that fish. So you're kind of in every element of that whole process thing, which is fairly unique. How long have you been doing this?
So for the commercial fishing side of it, this is my 26th season. And then for the direct to consumer, we're celebrating our 10-year anniversary. And then for 60 North, we're just finishing up our 7th season.
Excellent.
And that's the piece that, there are other direct marketers, but it was getting to the point where, that gets pretty hard. It gets hard to find someone to cut your fish to your specifications and deal with direct marketers. And so this small processing facility came up and we bought it. But it is kind of funny sometimes that's the youngest part of our operation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There
Sorry,
has to be some
what about
business
that?
struggles because owning a business in itself is a struggle. Then you add on the fact that it's a business that is at least partly in Alaska, or like a good portion of it's in Alaska. You have the warehouse in Washington, and then you're adding on this the seafood element of that. It sounds just incredibly challenging.
Hmm.
Oh yeah.
It's got to be fun too, though, right? Like, what's kind of the pros and cons of this endeavor?
I really love my job, and we talk about this often, and it is my narrative, probably 11 months of the year. And I really appreciate the opportunity that 60 North has given me. One to, our industry hasn't had it easy. It's all very cyclical, and same with our business. It's been challenging at times, and so fishing hasn't been great, but I'm able to rely on the income from 60 North to get us through the winter. And then dealing with people. I really enjoy working with people, and the crew that I have this year is far and beyond the best that I've ever had, and I'm excited to get up in the morning and get to work. And it made my fishing suffering because I would prefer to be working at the plant than out fishing.
Hmm.
I think it also helps us kind of weather some of the storms, because we're so connected. So with Sena Sea, we really have our finger on the pulse. So we know real time, okay, this run is happening right now. Let's get, say this year it would be the Copper River sockeye came in really strong. Let's put up extra Copper River sockeye. We might do our smoking with that and this and that, but we have our finger on the pulse, and we're able to make these real time decisions on what species gets smoked, what species isn't. Things like we do chop, so like the backbones that would normally be
Discarded.
discarded, we scrape with a spoon and we save that the meat one spoonful at a time, and we sell it in 1 pound portion, so it's just that scraped meat, so boneless, skinless. We call it chop. But things like that, we're able to kind of fully utilize the whole fish, and be a little more creative and nimble if we have a low season or things like that.
Hmm. Uh, a lot has changed since you started. What have been some of the challenges going forward as far as populations go? There's a lot of doom and gloom with some returns being a fraction of what they were, but in the last couple of years, there have been some really, really strong sockeye runs. So, what have you kind of observed as far as the health of the runs? And you're in the Copper River, Cordova area.
Correct. Yeah. So what I find the most challenging is educating our customer base, to be quite honest. And even outside of that, any other, wild fish consumers, it's, this, there is, people want to doom and gloom, but the fact of it is, we're in a information right now sort of society. And I don't know if, these runs, and it is all cyclical. So, was it bad 20 years ago? Yeah, I think that there was some bad times when I started fishing. We didn't have, the 500-year run like Bristol Bay just had, and these runs that the Copper just experienced, were maybe far and less, between. And in my time in this fishery, we've had them, a few times. So it's just really, I operate on a little bit more optimistic time frame of information, and then
Well, I think it's also important kind of how what's really interesting is because we deal with the end consumer, where a lot of fishermen don't. And what we find is on the end consumer side, people are really nervous, and they hear a lot of doom and gloom, and they're worried to buy wild salmon because they don't want to buy the last wild salmon, and they don't want it to get overfished because they bought it. There's this worry that if they consume wild salmon, it's going to cause overfishing, and it's really hard to turn that narrative around, because that's not how sustainable fishing works. We catch the fish, and I mean, first comes the escapement, and then we catch the fish, and whatever is sold is what's available. If
Hmm.
it's there, that's why I tell people, you see the wild salmon in the store, it's not the last fish. We've already accounted for escapements, and it's already a sustainable industry. So if when it's available, go ahead and buy it and eat it. And I think that messaging is sometimes misunderstood, especially in the lower 48 when they're just getting one side of the story.
Right. I can't remember where I read it, but there's a push to consume farmed salmon because the idea is that it's more sustainable because people don't know that the feed for the farmed salmon often comes from the lower grade fish that is caught by trawlers that is then put into the feed into these unhealthy fish farms that then create these horrible ecosystems for the things that are around those net areas. And it's considerably worse than
Mm-hmm.
getting wild fish. But I had no
Totally.
idea that that was even a thing. That the fact that people would actually believe that that's a better way to go with farm fish was pretty wild.
Oh, it's the most frustrating narrative that we end up fighting against. And it's kind of a corporate farm fish narrative, like save the wild fish, eat farm fish. And it's just like, oh, it's so frustrating because, you know, it's so different than that. Like, part of why Alaskan fish is so great and wild Alaskan salmon is because there are no farm fish, no fish farms allowed. So our returns, we don't have that issues they have in Canada and other places where the fish farms ruin the stocks. So it's just I like to flip it around when I'm talking to our customers and talk about, you want to be concerned, or you want to buy fish from the right source. You want it to be sustainable. Really flip it around and think about, when you're buying that wild salmon, your money is going to the wild salmon industry, which basically, in order to have a great return, we have to keep these rivers and waterways pristine. So you are funding an effort to keep wild salmon, you're keeping everything pristine. It's like, that's the way to go for what I see. I didn't probably explain that the best I ever have, but to me, it's like, um, investing in the wild salmon is investing in the habitat and the return, and forget the farm fish if you want sustainability.
Yeah. Well, I think people also think that you're either on the side of the fishermen or you're on the side of environmentalists, but that's really
Oh
it's
yeah,
not like
that's
that at
opposite
all.
too.
It's not
Totally.
even if you especially if you live in Alaska because everything is so close, you see how the importance of habitat for the fish. So you're almost an amateur if you hunt, if you fish, if you're a commercial fisherman, you're almost inherently an ecologist because you have to care about the environment and the habitat. They're not two
Yes,
separate things. It's not protagonist, antagonist. It's
totally.
way different than the narratives down south.
I agree 100%. And I think you're like touching on my personal hot button issues here, because I totally agree. And in the lower 48, often that's the way it's portrayed. And fishermen, especially commercial fishermen, are portrayed as, oh, they're just out there to get as much fish as possible. But if you talk to real actual commercial fishermen, they want to they want great returns. They want to do this the rest of their life. They want their kids to be able to do it. We're fifth generation fishing family. Fishermen have a much longer range view, and are often very, you know um, aware of the ecology.
Mhm. Can you talk a little bit about the seasons? Because there's also an idea that, and some of my friends who've come up here to visit, they think that commercial fishermen fish year round, and like 24 hours seven, or 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But can you talk a little bit about what the seasons are like and what the openings are like, and how many openings you get, or how long those openings are?
So here in Area E, and particularly starting with the Copper River, and generally the middle of May, we're going to be on a 12-hour period, and the management style has been in the last couple of years where they'll kind of come out and say we're going to get 3 periods, and they're using the fleet as kind of a test to see what's out there, and then 3 12-hour periods. So we'll fish on a Monday, Thursday, Monday, or Thursday, Monday, Thursday. And so in that time, it's the belief of not only the management and or the rest of the fleet that we're not going to kill the run in that time. It's a good indicator of what's here, what's out here, because the next time we get to see these fish is going to be 7 days later as they cross the sonar. So, I am really pretty happy with the way that they manage this fishery, and it's really managed tightly. And once they start seeing the numbers and they're taking our catch records and everything else, then they'll start loosening up a little bit and giving us more time. Like right now, we're just finishing up with a 36-hour period.
Still only twice a week.
Yeah, it's still only twice a week, unless they don't want to over escape. And then like we had a whole wad of fish come up this year. It was really interesting. It was really cold up here. As you know, being down in Juneau, Alaska was cold. And then, so all these fish are kind of milling around, waiting for the river to warm up just to that 39.2 Fahrenheit, and then they're going to bomb up. So we kind of whacked on them pretty hard at the beginning, and then all of a sudden the river warmed up, and then a massive wad of fish shot up the river. So I think it's we're being managed really well here.
That's good. Copper River fish that's world renowned fish, and I think it was in the 80s, late 70s, or whenever it was when the marketing of fish went from, unless you were in a coastal city that had the fresh fish in the fish market, it was pretty much just canned, and you didn't really have the access to fresh fish. And that really started to be marketed, especially in the Pacific Northwest. So, and then Copper River was at the helm of that. So, what is it about a Copper River fish that might stand out from other salmon?
Great question, because we have an ad running on Facebook right now that I'm on there all the time, not necessarily arguing, but educating, and trying to tell people that it's like, I'm not out here claiming that my salmon is the best. I think that it's uniquely different than a lot of different areas. Like the taku is one of my top 3 fish that I would say. Copper River being one, taku, and then the Fraser River are awesome fish. What's unique about the Copper River is how supple this fish is. I mean, it is uniquely different. The texture is different. The taste is different. And then you get into the kings. People want to talk about Southeast Troll King, which is unbelievable. They're just magnificent creatures to be caught. But this king that we have here is different. It tastes different. It looks different. And it's just a different fish. And not for everybody, of course, but for those that like it, it's awesome.
What's your favorite way to have fish?
The way that Sena cooks it.
Of course, good answer, without hesitation.
Yeah, because she does a really nice job. I mean, she's always. We eat a lot of fish, of course, as you can imagine, and she's coming up with real creative ways to eat it, and I don't get bored of it. I really enjoy eating a great piece of fish, and whether it's frozen or fresh or however we do it, it's really good, always. Sometimes it's like, that was a swing and a miss, or you overcooked it. But I don't generally comment on that. But she's done a really nice job. But I think my go-to would be a simple brown sugar pickling salt for about a half hour and a quick barbecue.
Nice. Yeah, that's the thing about salmon. When it's fresh and it's a good quality piece of meat, it doesn't smell like fish. It doesn't smell fishy. So even if you don't cook it perfectly, it's still going to taste pretty good. Like you can overcook it and say, okay, well, it's a little overcooked, but it's still good. You didn't ruin it necessarily. And fish is a lot more versatile than people think. There are people that think, well, the only way that you can cook it is just you put it on a cedar plank and or have a little bit of lemon pepper and that's it. And so people who don't really like a fishy taste, it's probably because they went to Safeway, they got some either a farmed fish or a degraded fish, and they just threw a little lemon pepper on it and then tried to just eat it in huge chunks rather than get a quality piece of fish and then cook it in a reasonable way.
Yeah, the quality is what really matters, and I agree. I have a lot of people that claim to not like fish. Well, they've just maybe grew up in the Midwest and never had good fish. And so, the quality to begin with, it's like a great steak. You don't have to do much if it's fresh and ready, high quality. you can't really screw it up.
Yeah. The other thing that I would say to that would be the things that we're doing at 60 would be rinsing the fish with ozonated water. Americans don't like fishy fish, and we use this ozonated water. It knocks the slime right off it, and it takes away that fishy fish smell. And it's really interesting and a unique way to do it. And we have done it from day one. And the other thing is we wrap each individual piece in parchment paper. It's really preserves the fish and the integrity of the fish. There's no gaping and any of that stuff. No light degradation when you're opening your freezer and pulling that piece of fish out. It looks like the day that it was cut.
What about bleeding fish and then storing it on the boat? The invention or the creation of that ice slurry, in addition to bleeding fish, seems to have been pretty good to keeping or preserving the quality of the fish. Is all that stuff really, really important?
Yes, absolutely. Sena would even speak more to it. She has her master's degree in seafood science from Oregon State with, flesh degradation on bleeding albacore tuna. So she could speak pretty well to it.
Yeah. I did. I looked at correlating handling techniques to the eating quality, but basically, as soon as it comes out of the water, it's time temperature, and you need to get it. You want it to be fully bled and chilled as fast as possible. So that time, on the boat, on the deck, getting it into the ice is really important, and just chilling it right away and not letting it kind of thrash around, because that's going to build up lactic acid. So just getting it chilled right away. But the RSW, refrigerated seawater, is great. It's water is a great thermal conductor. It just gets that temperature down right away.
So like on the bleed box, like we have a bleed box on my boat that we pump 125 gallons through a minute, and I put all my fish through that, and it is noticeable. My fish are noticeably different than others that don't do that.
It gets the blood out and chills it right away.
Yeah.
I was on the IFA ferry going from Ketchikan to Hollis with my wife. We're going to go to a couple of Forest Service cabins over there, and there was a guy who'd been up a couple times, and he was talking to his buddies. It was their first time, and he was bragging about fishing. This is his 5th trip up, and so he was the expert, and he was talking about how you didn't need to bleed fish, and he didn't know why people were bleeding fish. All you got to do is just keep it in the water. And I thought, oh man, this guy, and he's talking loud enough for everybody to hear, and those of us who are local are just thinking, man, that's not incorrect, but that's not correct. You don't want to actually, and interrupt his lunch. But I just thought, man, there's a lot of people out there who might not know what they're talking about. It's impacting.
So funny enough, Bristol Bay this year, Trident did away with a bleed incentive.
Really?
Oh, really?
Yeah, they said that, and I'm not going to quote it because I don't know it verbatim, but they said that bleeding is not a necessary thing for their fish. And so with the most important thing, which I would agree with, would be, first chilling. So it's, when you catch that fish and it dies, now you're on you have a time clock started. You got to get this fish to processing as quickly as possible.
My guess is, this is just a guess, that they don't want maybe improper bleeding. They'd rather just do it all themselves, maybe. But that's really interesting, and I'm surprised. I'm surprised to hear that.
At least they're keeping it cold. Like I had this picture of this guy who's not bleeding any fish, who just has it in this seawater that's getting warmer throughout the day, and they're just throwing him in there. But at least there's an element of cold.
Yeah, so we deal with up here. We're the only processor in town now that deals with the sport fishermen, and because we do all the custom processing for the sport guys, and we charge them, and some of them really appreciate the service, and others grumble at us and everything else. But it's these people spend a lot of money to come up here, and they take a lot of fish out of Alaska, and some of the handling practices are horrid. Like I drive out to the airport occasional, and they will be on their fish stringer, dragging the fish down the highway on the blacktop, filling up with gravel. And then we just started this last year where if you bring us your fish filleted, and we're going to charge you an asshole tax, and we're
Charge
going
you
to charge you
more.
more. So bring us the whole fish bled, and we will take care of it. We're the professionals, and we know how to handle fish.
Yeah.
And so it's a real challenge trying to educate, particularly the sport guys that, some of them want to come out here. They come up to Alaska with their pocket knife that grandpa gave them when they were kids and want to practice it on these beautiful fish. And it's just like, terrible.
Yeah, it's. I think there is a difference, maybe a subtle difference, maybe a big difference. I'm not sure. When I see a lot of people leaving town with a ton of fish, I think good for them because they're putting money into the economy. Hopefully, there was a local guide who was doing the guiding. Hopefully, it was a locally owned lodge. Hopefully, some local high school kid was doing the fish cutting, and hopefully, all the fish gets eaten. But my fear is that so much of that fish is going down and just going to end up freezer burned. And the big point is to get the pictures with the fish and then have everybody look at you at the airport with all of the boxes of fish that you have. And that's kind of the end of it. It's not about
Yeah.
eating all of it, or it's used as a currency. You go down there, you give it away. Oh, I give it to all my neighbors and they love it. Well, why don't you eat it? Do you not like it? If you don't
Right.
like it, why are you taking so much? But again, it's all
Yeah.
within the law. It's just a
Yeah.
ethical,
Well,
moral thing.
plus they might like it more if that a little more effort was put into that preserving the quality. That's how we think of it. It comes out of the water perfect. We're just preserving that quality.
Yeah, it's pretty tough. I was on the airplane coming back up here. I had to fly down south for a quick visit, and on the airplane was about a party of a dozen people. They get off the airplane in Cordova, and I had a bag waiting, and so I got to see all the coolers that these people brought in, and they were stuffed full of all their food and booze and everything else, not contributing anything to our economy here. And I understand a little bit more why these people get a little upset about sport fishing.
Yeah.
And I appreciate them. I'm very courteous to them, and they're, for the most part, really nice people to deal with. But when you get into a situation like that where you just want to take, and these people, I mean, you're at that point, you're talking about, you know, over 1,000 pounds of product leaving without any, anything more than just a couple fishing licenses. It's just
But
like,
yeah, that's a
Yeah.
good point. It may be for them to just realize their impact. When they're there spending money, even in town, that yes, things are expensive in Alaska, but it's not a waste.
Yeah.
You're helping the economy of the place you're visiting.
yeah, it's something that, and the people that do argue with me about the cost, I just, politely ask them just to move out of the way because the guy behind you is waiting patiently.
To
Yeah.
buy the fish.
Yeah.
I grew up on Prince of Wales Island, so I remember riding my bike down to the river, and there'd be people who would come up, and there were some really gracious, really incredible tourists who were up there fishing and would ask questions and just loved being up there, and they were so happy to be up here. And others were a little less thrilled with having the local kid there, but it kind of informed me. So when I go to different places to fish, if I'm down in Wyoming or something like that fishing, I think, all right, let's go to the local fly shop. Let's buy some flies. Let's
Right.
talk to some people. Let's go to the store. Let's buy some stuff and just kind of appreciate the culture. Then also look for the people who live there year round. I think that's an element that's missed a lot by a corporate lodge that doesn't have any local employees. It can be an incredible experience, and not to begrudge people who have a property or who people coming up for a summer job. That's all well and good, but I think people miss an element when they don't have the chance to talk with a local person, like the local kid, the local family, like what type of person lives here year round. And I think that's an incredible miss for a lot of people when they come up here and get the whole experience. Yeah, you're doing your fishing. Yeah, you're seeing your whales. Yeah, you're doing all that. But just meeting people who live there is such an incredible part of the experience.
Yeah. Yep. No, 100% agree.
So, Sina, I want to talk about your family a little bit. Your great grandfather was a fisherman in Norway. Your
Mm-hmm.
grandfather came over from Norway. He was a longliner in 1938, and then your family's just always been in the fishing business. So some people want to get out of the family business. Why did you not only want to like get in, but stay in and modernize it.
Yeah, it's one of those things. It was never on purpose, really. um, when I was when I was growing up, I mean, it was what everybody did. We live in Seattle, so in Ballard, which is a fishing community. And my uncles fished, my dad fished, my grandpa fished, everybody fished, and so it was just a part of life. But when I went to college, I didn't. Well, actually, I guess stepping back, even in high school, I would go out on the boat with my dad, or people picture kind of going out with fishing poles, but I mean going out on a longliner, so going up to Alaska and fishing. And so it was a part of my life, but never really a plan. And when I went to college, I got a degree in nutrition and food science, and then I went to get my master's degree in food science. And that's where I got involved with the fisheries, really just because there was an opening. And again, it was like, well, yeah, I know fish. They want someone that could get fish off the boat, no problem. Um, I still didn't think it was my plan. I just, liked that degree. And so then Rich and I ended up getting married, and he got a chance on my dad's boat, and he'd already fished a little bit for Bristol Bay. So it just kind of all worked out that way. And it's funny when you look back and go, oh, well, I guess that worked out, didn't it?
How did you two meet?
We grew up on the only a couple miles apart on an island in the Pacific Northwest. So we met growing up, and then Rich just ended up going fishing and then just trying it out.
Met at a party.
Excellent.
In real life, nobody meets in real life anymore.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So what about the future? This is a sustainable practice. We talked about the runs being in pretty decent shape. 10, 15, 20 years down the road, where do you see things going? It's impossible to predict, and we're not going to like come back and quote you on this, but where do you think things go?
We can barely predict next week.
Yeah. Impossible question.
Oh, I think that we're going to see, I think particularly for the Copper River, I think that's a great question. This is maybe the pessimistic side coming out a little bit, where I'm a little bit concerning of the aging of the fleet, and how are we going to get young people into this line of business at a rate that they can make a living.
It's so expensive now.
Yeah, and I'm not, like I've always worked year round. I've had some really good years, and been able to provide for my family, but this is a really expensive business to get into, and you have to be very capitalized to do it, and cheap money is hard to come by anymore, particularly over the last couple of years. And so I think that it's going to take a lot of money to get people involved in this sort of line of work.
Well, it's interesting too. We were talking the other day with somebody else, and it's the aging of the fleet, but also aging of the boats. Here we are working on our boat. There's some pretty fancy new boats, but a lot of people are making an old boat keep going because they can't afford a new boat. So, how long can you keep that boat going too?
Yeah. And I think if I had a dream, it would be to see more of these fishermen, demanding more for their fish, and then being more involved with the selling of the fish, whether it be, partnering with myself in 60 North and seeing it all the way through, and seeing a more, profitability from the fish that they bring to the table. Because at the end of the day, we have all the power. We, as a fisherman, own the rights to fish. We own the boats, and we own the permits and everything else to go fishing. It's these processors that, and this is why my business partner and I got involved with this, is to, really see that value that this fish deserves. And so having a small producer, take a little bit more fish to the marketplace, would be great. Telling the story of, how wonderful this fish is. But I think that, on the bigger scheme of the industry, I think that black cod is something that, we all need to be taking a look at, and scratching our head on how we can, squeeze more awareness out of this fish and then a couple more bucks out of it.
Well, it's an amazing fish.
Yeah.
And not Americans don't
Well,
know about it.
Yeah,
that
they
much.
just don't know about it. And when they try it, it's like, holy smokes.
Yeah, pickled black cod, it doesn't get a whole lot better than that.
Yeah. Yeah. And how many people do that? So there's some to go to a place where people congregate, a farmer's market, and be able to offer pickled black cod, you would sell out.
Do that.
So it's,
Yeah, some interesting marketing questions going forward too, like with obviously Copper River salmon, massive, huge, world popular, but with like a chum salmon, it's had to be marketed. They've changed it to Takeda, and a lot of the eggs. I have a commercial fisherman buddy, and he said, yeah, that the eggs are far more valuable than the fish. But the fish is a really mild, good tasting fish, and it's too bad that it can't be marketed in the same way, and people don't appreciate it in the same way.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe as our population, continues to grow, I mean, we're in the business of dealing with protein. And, oftentimes my statements on Facebook or any of our ads, it's just like, we're dealing with a protein that is not cheap, and it shouldn't be cheap. To eat a Copper River king salmon is something that, not everybody is going to get to experience, and it shouldn't be either. So, but everybody should be able to experience a great chum salmon and or a pink salmon too, along those lines. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that fish. It's just in the matter of way it's handled.
So the pink has always kind of been the money fish for a lot of fisheries around the state. So what role does that have in your fishing world right now?
None at this point. And the reason for it is that the reason that pinks, demand what the attention they get is, one, here 60 North is small enough that we're still taking pictures of our fish, and they're cute and everything, but you operate on the world of a Trident or an Ocean Beauty, and they're selling the roe. So here I'm trying to peddle flesh, and these guys are dealing in the world of roe, and I can't compete
In high volume.
in high volume. So
Pinks is high volume.
nothing wrong with a great pink salmon. And we just happen to be in our region, including yourself, we're salmon rich. And so do I have to eat a pink salmon? No. Do I choose to? Probably not. It wouldn't probably be my go-to fish, but there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. I've seen, and we've put up some wonderful pink salmon for some customers, and I've eaten it, and it's good. Very good.
Yeah, and I mean, it could be better utilized, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just a matter of how much value adding you want to put into it.
What as far as hatcheries go, and hatcheries are significantly different than farmed fish. So when people think that hatchery is like the midway point, I'd probably say it's more like wild, because it's just that entry spot in which there is human interaction to increase the survival, and then they go and they run their normal course. And in Alaska, I'm pretty sure that Klawak has the only hatchery on a run that has native fish as well. So it's meant to enhance the populations, and in some areas it's the only run in that area, so it provides another place for people to catch fish. It provides extra fish. Do you have much of a hatchery presence up there, and are they kept kind of separate so you're not mixing? Is there a difference?
So we have several hatcheries in Prince William Sound. We have a hatchery. We have the Golcana run is a hatchery run also, and it's kind of struggling. And I think that they've had, due to some infrastructure issues and flooding and washing out of on the crazy Copper River. And then we have, a Copper or a Prince William Sound, Main Bay hatchery, and some other pink hatcheries in the Sound. And our runs, this fishery again is, we have a lot of wild stock over in Prince William Sound with Cog Hill and East Chamois. And
so Prince William Sound, it's a mix.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And you can, they're all great fish. They look wonderful. And sometimes you can tell the difference in the runs and where they're coming from. But I believe that the stock that came from that for the hatchery came from one of the Copper River runs.
Oh.
It might be what river is it? Eyak or something like that, I think.
The first run that opens up down here for commercial opens up June 1st, and it's a terminal run of kings. So and it's a very small area. So you've got trollers and you've got locals who are fishing this very small area by where they release the fish, and so the kings obviously can't get up to that river because it's not a spawning river. Just they know to come back to that spot, so it's hammered, and then the areas open up a little bit more, and so you get more trollers, and it's not until the 16th that everything opens up in the Ketchikan area. The outside waters it's open, but that's to allow as many fish as possible to get by the Ketchikan area and go up the Unic and spawn up in Canada. So the hatchery presence is really important for that early run for commercial and for charter and for locals. And yeah, like the fish is pretty much indistinguishable. There's a lot of talk about, if they do mix or if they do follow some wild fish up, they might be mixing and it could end up being bad. But it seems like we're at the point now where to completely get rid of the hatchery system could be pretty catastrophic to commercial fishing.
Yeah, it very well could, but it's
That's
like
another
a way of
impossible
life.
question.
Yeah, and a political question that I'm sure a lot of people would have. I know the opinions of a few of them, and I don't know, it's tough. I think that I'm going to go back to your 15-year question real quick, and what I would envision is that there's some mutual respect between user groups that I think that we need to reach. I think that it probably, as you have mentioned, some places down in Southeast that are really struggling also for the pie of king, and we're doing the same up here with the Copper River and user groups, and it's one user group feels outed from the others, and so it's always fighting. And I think that hopefully one day we're going to be able to figure this out and understand that we're all for the preservation and betterment of the Copper River salmon and Prince William Sound, quite frankly, too.
Yeah.
So it's a real issue. These
and user groups being gill netters,
personal use
or
subsistence, to all the way through. Board of Fish is a really big deal.
It's odd to be on the same team and yet have so much conflict, I guess, because the roles are so different, and it's really, really tough.
Yeah, and then being a gill netter, like in this fleet, we have 540 independent business people that think differently. Not every business model that, and I consider every one of these guys a business person, and they're why they sell to Trident or why they sell to Copper River or why they sell to me is a personal business decision that they each have to do and come up with. And, so their politics are going to be different than mine and then different from user group to user group. Super interesting.
So in closing here, what would be the pitch for, and how can people order fish? What would be the best fish to order right now? Because sometimes things are seasonal. Give me the pitch for the fish.
Well, we love when people go to the website, senasea.com, senasea.com. And we love when people join the email list, because that's where we let people know. I'm emailing, every week and letting people know what's available, what just hit the docks, and the seasonality, because not everybody knows what's in season all the time. Right now we have everything in stock because it's summer. So we have everything. We have a little bit of king left. It's we're probably going to sell out a king in, I don't know, another month. Whereas last year we had king through February. So it just changes every year. But Copper River sockeye, we try to put it up to never run out of, because that's our mainstay. It's our bread and butter. It's what a lot of people are looking for. And then we've got coho coming in a couple weeks, maybe a week. We'll have a little bit. And then we've got a great subscription. So we have a subscription service or one time, but we have this really cool subscription that is a seasonal variety. So if you go, I'd like, 8 portions every other month or something like that, we will put in the box whatever's seasonal. So Like we'll put in sockeye in the spring and we'll put coho in the fall, things like that. And you can just kind of rely on us to know the seasons, which is nice.
Do you have recipes or links to recipes, things like that? What comes in there?
Yeah, we've got tons of recipes on the site online, and then we put recipe cards in every box. So when you get your fish, it's going to have a card that tells you, how to handle it, how to defrost it, and then you're going to get recipe cards for each species. So we really try to make it easy for people, knowing that, not everybody feels comfortable with fish, and we're trying to make it easy so people can eat more of it.
Mm-hmm. And how big are the portions? It's like an individual size, or is it a full fillet?
They're individually vacuum sealed, and we typically 6 ounce is our typical portion, but we cut some fish as an 8 ounce, and so the king and the coho get cut bigger just because they're thicker fish, and you don't want a sliver.
Excellent. And then where can people follow you on social media and all of that?
We're pretty active on Instagram, Sena C, I think _ seafoods. And so come check us out there. And like I said, we love to see people on the email list because that's where we really do a lot of educating and connecting.
And on Facebook too.
And Facebook, yeah.
Oh,
With Sena C Seafoods on Facebook too.
well, great. Thanks a lot for being on here. It's been great chatting with you, get to know you, and I think we're going to have some halibut for dinner tonight.
Awesome. Yeah, that's another great fish to talk about. Like people think that fresh halibut is the best, and when we would bring our trip down from Alaska down to Bellingham, it was by the time it got to the dock, I think it was 6 days old, and that was the best fish to take. It was, you lose water weight, and the fish firms up, and it's just awesome at that point.
Halibut.
Age your halibut a little bit.
I'm a big fan of halibut and also lingcod. And there are a lot of my buddies down here say lingcod is far superior to the halibut, but
I like lingcod
really
too.
can't go wrong either way.
Yep. It's all good stuff.
Yeah. Well, good luck with the rest of the season, and we'll stay in touch.
Yeah. Thank you very
you.
much. Really appreciate it.
Take care.